ほら、ルフィ、今一緒に海賊になる仲間を探してるんだ。
Hello guys, welcome to my channel The Wandering Zoro, your go-to destination for anime-related content. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. In today's video, we're going to be diving into part 1 of the series, so be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. The loud, grinding sound of the coffee beans filled the small cafe, along with the bitter aroma of fresh ground coffee. It's a calming sensation when you sit in the warmth of a coffee shop knowing you don't need to freeze outside. Even though the sun had barely shown itself, the morning had begun. The barista's hands moved quickly to prepare a hot cup of coffee. It seemed as if he had done it a million times. He carefully but swiftly poured the frothy milk into the mug in a way that formed a heart. The barista carried the mug over to the customer's table and placed it down quietly, careful not to disturb him from his thoughts. But the man looked towards the barista with tired eyes. "Thank you." The barista gave him a simple nod, before returning behind the counter to clean. The man sipped on the coffee and immediately felt rejuvenated. The coffee here was one of the many reasons why he loved the small cafe. Since he worked during the night, coming to this cafe was convenient. It was open from 3 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. every day, and always clean and quiet. He had been coming to the cafe for a few weeks, every day after work. He loved it even more when the green-haired boy worked. He favored his coffee. It was never too bitter, never too sweet, never too hot, never too cold. He felt like he was reborn every time he drank the boy's coffee, and he wondered how someone so young could be such a good barista. The young barista walked around cleaning tables until they sparkled, and watered the store's green plants. The customer smiled. The atmosphere was perfect. The barista glanced over at the customer. He liked how quiet he was and how calm he seemed, despite it being 4 in the morning. He would never sigh, despite looking tired and lost in thought. Many underground heroes would come for coffee in the early hours of the morning. This black-haired customer happened to be one of them. He was a regular. He came every day and ordered the same cup of coffee, then sat in the same spot. Work had been stressful for the hero. He was tasked with tracking down a stealthy vigilante that had been solving all the crimes and problems villains were creating. Not that anyone really cared. It just meant others had no work to do. The store door flew open, and the little bell on the door rang. The barista looked towards the disruption. "Izuku, sorry I'm a bit late. I remembered we didn't have eggs." A lady in the same uniform as the barista yelled. The barista smiled, then signed "that's all right" with his fingers. The lady looked towards the customer and smiled. "Good morning, Eraserhead." "Good morning, Nan Amy. You can just call me Shota," he greeted with a smile. "Okay, Shota. Well, I have to go start baking. Have a good day." She bowed, then ran off to the staff kitchen. Izuku glared at the muddy footprints Nan Amy tracked into the store. He grabbed the mop from the staff room, then began to mop away the dirt. When he was done, he tapped his finger on the hero's table to collect his attention. The hero glanced up at the teen, whom quickly scribbled onto a notepad and slid it across the table. The hero read it. "I just mopped. Try not to slip." "Thanks, kid. I understand sign language, though. Next time you can just sign it." He smiled and slid the notepad back. The teen picked it up and nodded, then got back to work. The hero sunk back into his thoughts regarding the vigilante. He wondered how he'd ever catch someone that had never been seen on a camera. He himself had only seen them once. He had no clue that the person he was searching so hard for had just made his coffee. Hey! It was around 10 in the afternoon. Izuku had just woken up and was getting ready to go out for a mission. He slipped on a long-sleeved black shirt, black trousers, and a black belt. The belt held various weapons and supplies that were both lightweight and effective in battle. He slipped a dark gray coat on that covered his weapons and stored more, and it had a hood that hid the teen's face well. He put in special purple-colored contacts that allowed him to scan people's faces to find out their identity, as well as useful information about them. They activated when he squinted and deactivated when he squinted a second time. He slipped on some gloves that still allowed him to use touch-effective devices. After sitting down in his desk chair, he opened his laptop and turned it on. His fingers typed at an inhuman speed while different codes ran across the screen. As soon as he pressed enter, a green map with a red dot appeared on the screen. He studied the streets that lead to the red dot, then opened up a Word document. The document had 50 pages on it, with writing and pictures scattered across them. He typed another 1,000 words, inserted a picture, then pressed print on the document. While it was printing, he walked into his bathroom. He picked up a paintbrush and dipped it in purple face paint, then painted a vertical line down his eyelid. He put a black face mask on that had 2 little purple diamonds sewn into it. After collecting the printing and putting it in a folder, he jumped out of his window and into an alley. It was a cold night since winter had begun, so the streets were bare. Still, to protect his identity, he remained in the shadows. He ran through the streets until he made it to his destination. In front of him towered a large restaurant. Izuku believed it was suspicious. The president of the restaurant owned far more than he could with what his restaurant produced, so with a bit of hacking, Izuku managed to bring up his bank statements. He managed to find enough evidence that suggested he was involved with trafficking and that he partook in money laundering to hide the evidence. Illegal trafficking is a global black market dedicated to production, distribution, and sales of illegal toxins. There have been reports of illegal toxins being shipped off to other countries from Japan, which did not have licensing and could not be tracked back to an address. It was believed that the toxins were produced in Japan and sold off to other countries. However, this is a risky and dangerous process in a technologically advanced world. Agencies and police, however, had no clue as to who could be producing and selling the illegal toxins due to the intelligent mind behind the crime. However, Izuku had been looking into various suspicious individuals that were getting wealth from unknown sources. He had already exposed, captured, and dismantled 3 major companies for illegal trafficking. They were significantly easy to catch, since they had what's called dirty money, or money that had an unknown origin. Tonight's case, however, was more careful about it. Through money laundering, they managed to make the money appear clean. Money laundering is the illegal process of making large amounts of money generated by a criminal activity. The money from the criminal activity is considered dirty, and the process launders it to make it look clean. That's exactly what this company had done. Except they made a grave mistake. One of the most common techniques associated with money laundering is legitimate, cash-based business owned by a criminal organization. In this case, it is the restaurant. The company increased the daily cash receipts to funnel illegal cash through the restaurant and into the restaurant's bank account. After that, the fund can be withdrawn as needed. To make this successful, the increase in the cash receipts needs to be small enough not to be suspicious. It's time-consuming, but effective. When Izuku hacked into the restaurant's bank statements, he noticed large sums of money that had no purpose there, which he then tracked back to illegal deeds. After hacking the security cameras in the restaurant, he managed to find the directions to a basement. The basement unfortunately had no security cameras in it, but he knew the room was important, as it contained a fingerprint lock on it. Before he left his apartment, he hacked back into the cameras to turn them all off, as well as the restaurant security alarm. Izuku picked the lock on the closed restaurant and snuck in. As he snuck through the large building, he searched through the long hallways until he finally found the door. He pulled a screwdriver out of his cloak's pocket, then took the lock apart. He took out a tablet, then connected it to a little slot inside of the lock's body. He typed away on the keyboard and watched the codes run across the screens. Eventually, little green lights flashed on the lock, and the door clicked open. He disconnected the tablet and carefully put it away, then put the lock back together. He pushed the door open to reveal a set of stairs that lead down to another door with a simple lock on it. After rushing quietly down the stairs and opening the lock, he pushed the door open to reveal exactly what he expected to find. Rows and rows of cannabis. A fist flew towards his head and smashed into him, forcing his small body to topple to the ground. Vital fluid ran down his face as if a massive wound had just opened up. Izuku looked towards the cause, and there stood a man wearing a suit. He looked like a god. Izuku squinted. A bunch of data popped up around his eyes. Name, Uritaki Shin. Age, 27. Quirk, unknown name. He can cover his arms and hands with solidified cement and manipulate their shape. Occupation, God at famous restaurant. Izuku squinted again, then glanced at the man's fist. It had a jagged layer of cement on it. No wonder I'm bleeding so much. The man launched his fist towards the teen again, but he sprung up onto his feet and pulled out a set of playing cards. Who are you and how did you get in? The man snapped. Izuku didn't reply. Instead, he threw the cards at unnatural speeds. Each card lodged itself into the man. Vital fluid began to dribble from each card wound. The teen disappeared from the man's field of vision, then jumped out from the shadows and tackled him to the ground. Before the man could even react, he chopped him the side of the head to knock him out. He zip-tied the man's arms and legs together, then painted a purple diamond onto his head. The teen happily stood up and quickly looked for other guards. There were none. He took the tablet out and took photos of all the illegal toxins, then of the guard. There was nothing else he could do since the president of the company wasn't present, so he decided he'd leave the rest to the police. He hacked the cameras that lead to the police station to turn them off, using the tablet, of course. Then he ran through the shadows to the station. He snuck into the police station, then to the officers' staff rooms. He sat the folder with his report in it on Detective Tsukochi's desk. The officer looked up at him and flinched. "You're the Diamond Vigilante," he mumbled. Izuku nodded, then pointed to the folder. The detective opened the folder and flicked through the pages quickly. Izuku connected a USB to the tablet and began downloading the images he took onto it. He then sat the USB on the desk. The detective chuckled. "You've really done my job for me yet again." He glanced at the teen and frowned. "Your head is bleeding." Izuku wiped the wet stain off his forehead and stared at it. "It's okay." He signed. The detective stood up. "No, let me get the first aid kit," the man said. But when he looked up, the teen was gone. The hero sat grumpily in the quiet coffee shop. The vigilante had solved yet another problem and wrote a report on it as well. After Izuku left the station, heroes and police were immediately sent to the site to capture the guards and finish the case. The president was arrested, along with his associates. Yet, Aizawa still had no leads on who the vigilante was. Izuku stood behind the counter as he polished the mugs until they were like mirrors. He was rather distracted by the pounding headache the guard gave him. He managed to cover the wound with his hair so no one could see it. But Aizawa had noticed he seemed a little out of it. Nanami walked out of the staff room and placed a variety of cakes in the glass display. She glanced at Izuku, who was aggressively polishing a mug. "Izuku, that's perfect how it is. You can take a break if you want," Nanami calmly mentioned. Izuku flinched and looked towards her. "All right. Thanks," he quietly abided. Nanami smiled. The teen didn't talk much, but his voice was somehow soothing. The cafe during the day was well known by the hard of hearing and deaf community, as both Izuku and Nanami knew sign language. The little cafe had become rather famous, but it was still nice and quiet during the early hours of the morning. Aizawa had only heard Izuku speak once before. He was curious as to why the boy didn't talk much. Izuku made himself a hot chocolate, then walked to a table in the corner of the cafe and sat down. The hero watched as the teen sipped on his hot chocolate. He seemed to be concentrating on his thoughts. He seemed bothered by something. "Izuku," Aizawa called through the store. The teen looked towards the hero with a questioning expression. "You seem out of it today. Is there anything on your mind?" he asked. Izuku shook his head. "I'm all right, thanks." He signed. Aizawa wondered why he wouldn't speak. He gave the teen a quizzical expression, but turned towards his coffee. Izuku smiled a little. He knew the hero was trying to capture him. He found it somewhat humorous that he was sitting so close to him without a clue who he really was. "Mr. Aizawa," Izuku quietly called across the room. The hero looked towards him, seeming somewhat surprised that he spoke. "Yeah," he calmly asked. "How's work? Been tough lately?" "You always lost in thought," the teen quietly asked. "Tough, I suppose. I'm supposed to find a vigilante that goes out at the same time as me. But we know nothing about them," Aizawa explained. Izuku smiled. He was happy to be getting information without the need to hack into private documents. "Do you have any leads, then?" Izuku asked. "Not really. We know they are about 5 feet 0 inches tall, 152 centimeters, and possibly male. The detective managed to speak to them last night. Oh, and they use sign language instead of speech. They have purple eyes, but we have no clue on the age. They are skilled enough to have gone through decades of training, but we're thinking between 25 and 30 years old due to how young their face seemed. Aizawa recounted. Izuku tapped his finger on the table. He was mad, because he is 100% 5 feet 1 inch, not 5 feet 0 inches. He was happy they thought he was so old, though. He was only 13, but his fake ID said he was 17. Well, do your best, the teen said as he stood up and walked back to the counter to wash his mug and polish it. Eddie. Izuku was typing away at a Word document. He was collecting information on the first-year UA students. He liked to keep track of all the heroes he discovered, as well as villains. This included students from hero schools, even if they didn't finish high school. His laptop beeped and a notification popped up. He opened it and typed away as a map appeared with a red dot. Camera footage played on the screen. It showed a villain attacking civilians that were walking past. He pulled his hood over his head and jumped out the window. The fight wasn't too far from his house. He scaled the buildings and grabbed a pipe. After using the pipe to swing onto the top of a building, he gazed down into the streets and squinted. Different piles of information ran down his field of vision. When he had taken it all in, he squinted again and jumped off the building. His shoes were designed with a few layers of material that acted as an enduring and unfaltering crumple zone. The shoes decelerated Izuku as he hit the ground. Reducing the acceleration rate of Izuku diminishes the amount of force, which decreases the force applied to his legs when he hit the ground. He ran quietly through the shadows until he was close to the villain, who was holding a civilian hostage. Izuku ran up behind the villain, jumped high in the air while spinning and kicked him in the head. The force of his kick was hard enough to send him flying across the road. Izuku moved at a swift speed as soon as he had kicked the villain to grab the civilian and return her to her group. A hero. One of the girls cheered. Everyone standing on the street cheered as Midoriya knocked the villain out and zip-tied his arms and legs together. He painted a diamond on the villain's head before quickly descending back into the darkness. The civilians were confused as to where their hero ran off to. He found it amusing to watch them search. The police eventually came and arrested the villain, so Izuku stood up to leave. He took out his tablet and typed away at the keyboard. A map popped up with a few red dots on certain spots. After he put the tablet away, he rushed to the nearest red dot. There was another villain attack. This time a few civilians had been injured by the villain's quirk. Izuku squinted and took in the information in front of him. Quirk, blade arms. Can make sharp blades come out from his arm, used like a sword. He jumped off the building and ran up behind the villain, ensuring all his steps were quiet. Using his hand, he whacked the villain in the head, knocking him out. After quickly zip-tying his arms and legs together, he rushed towards the injured civilians and pulled out a clean bandage. He treated everyone's wounds carefully, without noticing the police had pulled up. A hand was placed on his shoulder, so he quickly spun around. Aizawa was standing there with a satisfied grin. Hello there, little vigilante, Aizawa called. Izuku grabbed the hero's scarf and swiftly sliced a section of it off with a knife. The hero looked dumbfounded. The teen wrapped it around an injury on the civilian in front of him. I ran out of bandages. The vigilante signed before he threw a throwing card towards the hero. The hero managed to catch the card, but when he looked back towards the teen to scold him, he was gone. He looked around quickly and noticed him climbing the wall of a building. The hero ran towards the building and threw his capture gear to a pole that was connected to the wall. He swung up to the top and threw his capture gear at the teen. Before he had the chance to dodge, he was binded by the hero. Don't worry. I just want to talk, Aizawa mumbled as he pulled the vigilante towards himself. Izuku had no clue how to escape the tight capture gear. He couldn't move his arms enough to slice it away, and all his weapons were pressed against his body. Aizawa reached towards the teen's face mask, but he kicked the hero in the nuts before he could touch him. The hero released his grip on his gear, allowing the teen to release himself. He swiftly pulled the hero into an arm lock and tripped him onto the ground. That's playing dirty, Aizawa complained in a husky tone. The teen zip-tied the hero's hands together and jumped off of him. Sorry, just doing my patrols, he signed, making sure the hero could see. Izuku turned around to run of the building, but his ankle was suddenly wrapped up by Aizawa's gear. He tripped to the ground and quickly glanced at his foot. The hero was using his gear, despite his hands being zip-tied up. You forget I'm well-trained. Don't compare me to those weak villains you fight. Aizawa smirked. He ripped the zip ties off his hands and pulled tighter on his capture gear. Izuku quickly pulled out a dagger and sliced the gear away. The hero used this chance to grab the teen's arm and pull it behind his back. You are a very skilled fighter, I'll give you that. But you have a lot of openings. Aizawa held his knee on top of the teen's arm and pressed his head down with his hand. The hero activated his quirk, expecting the Vigilante to activate his own. Little did he know, the teen had no quirk. He wondered why his quirk wasn't working on the teen. Then he released his grip slightly. You're quirkless, Aizawa mumbled. The teen flinched at the word. It brought back harsh memories he wished to forget. Despite his stresses, he used the hero's sudden loose grip to rip his arm free and hit the hero over the head with his fist. He jumped up and quickly dove off the building without looking back. He ran as fast as he could back to his apartment, and as soon as he got through the window, he locked it and pulled the blinds down. He collapsed onto his knees, exhaled sharply. He couldn't get that word out of his head. Quirkless. It was a word that had caused him a lot of pain. He took his mask off and stood up. It was 2 a.m. He had to get ready for work. He carefully put away his vigilante costume and contacts, then hopped into the shower. He stared at the large burn that covered his lower torso. Even though it had been years since he received it, it was still painful to see. Starting from his shoulder and ending at his elbow was a word that had been carved into his skin. Failure. He clicked his tongue and stepped out of the shower. After drying himself off, he changed into his work clothes and made his way to the small cafe. It was before 3. Izuku was setting up all the equipment that would be needed for the day when Nanami walked in. Izuku was startled that she was actually on time for once. You're never on time, Izuku teased. Huh? I'm on time most days. She pouted. Izuku began to make her a coffee with a smile. You look tired. Are you taking care of yourself properly? Are you eating enough? She asked. Yes, I'm doing just fine. He slid a coffee across the counter to her. Are you sure? It's hard to live alone when you're only 13. She sipped on her coffee. I'm comfortable, he reassured as he cleaned the coffee machine. Nanami was the only person in the world who knew of his real age. He looks like a baby. Perhaps his slightly muscular build made him look older, but he really was only 13. All right. I'll go start baking. She waved as she walked off with her coffee. Izuku followed her into the kitchen. I'll help. I've got enough time to make macarons before we open, the teen mumbled as he pulled his long sleeves up and washed his hands. Does that mean I get to eat your famous macarons? She shuffled towards him. If you pay, then you can have one. The teen began quickly whipping up macarons. It took him less than a minute to prepare the batter and get it in the oven. He looked at the time and frowned. Perhaps I'll make croissants too. The barista ended up making macarons, chocolate croissants, plain croissants, and mochi before he opened the shop. He put the food he made on display before he began polishing the milkshake glasses. Heroes would often come in for takeaway coffee after their night shifts. More commonly, the underground heroes that wanted a quiet place to relax would eat in. Aizawa walked in at around 4:15 in the morning. He was the only one in the store. Good morning. Would you like the usual? Izuku quietly asked. Yeah, thanks. Aizawa smiled as he sat down in his usual comfy spot. Izuku began grinding coffee beans. Nanami walked out of the kitchen with a plate of cupcakes and noticed Aizawa. Oh, Shota, Izuku made macarons today. You should try one. She bounced up and down. One of her cupcakes fell face down on the floor. That sounds fantastic. But you dropped a cupcake. Aizawa pointed at the cupcake without realizing she was already rushing to get him a macaron. She slipped on the cupcake and went flying forwards. Izuku turned to look at her and gasped. She fell right onto the small teen, sending them both crashing into the ground. They all heard a loud crack and the shatter of glass. Aizawa jumped up and ran over. Izuku had caught the plate of cupcakes safely, and Nanami was cushioned by Midoriya during the fall. Midoriya looked towards Nanami, who was apologizing repeatedly. I'm sorry. I broke one of the mugs. Izuku quietly apologized. It was my fault. Nanami bowed down with her head touching the ground. Izuku, your arm's broken, Aizawa said, pointing to the teen's swollen arm. Izuku stood up and placed a plate of cupcakes on the counter. He noticed Aizawa. Oh, I'm sorry. Your coffee passed away on the floor. I'll make another one, he quietly apologized, then rushed to get a mop. Nanami stood up and looked towards Aizawa. I'll get you that macaron. She held her thumbs up and pulled out a small plate. No, forget it. His arm is broken. I think we should go to hospital, Aizawa blankly mentioned. Huh. She looked towards Izuku, who brought out a mop and began cleaning the mess up. His arm was swelling up. Izuku, we are going to hospital, Nanami screamed. Izuku flinched and looked towards her. Wait, does this mean he won't be able to work? Aizawa asked. I suppose. Damn, I'm gonna be busy now. Nanami pouted. I can still work just fine. Izuku continued moping. He was used to the pain. No one listened to him, though. I can't go without his coffee for a day. I won't survive. I'll take him to UA and get Recovery Girl to heal his injury. Aizawa decided. Oh, that's a great idea. I'll pack some macarons as a thank you. Nanami grabbed a takeaway box. Izuku looked towards them. But I am fine. No, you're not. You can't make coffee in that state. Aizawa scolded. Nanami pushed Izuku towards the door with a box of macarons. Take care. Nanami smiled. Aizawa walked out of the store with Izuku and watched as Nanami closed it. Let's go. Aizawa and Izuku walked silently towards UA. The sun had yet to rise, and the streets were quiet. Not even the sound of the hero or Vigilante's steps could be heard. They had both been trained to walk silently. Are you going to talk to Recovery Girl? You can't really sign with your arm like that. It'd be too sore to move, Aizawa mentioned as he glanced at the teen's swollen arm. Izuku sighed, then nodded. My hand's gone numb, he quietly mentioned. Is there a specific reason why you don't talk much? Aizawa asked cautiously. Yeah. But I'd rather not go into it. Izuku mumbled as he thought to himself. Flashback. 9 years ago. Smack. That's the sound that echoed through the house. Izuku had just been diagnosed as quirkless and had returned home to tell his father. Hisashi, don't hit him. Inko cried. Izuku's eyes filled with tears that spilled as wails left his mouth. Hisashi kicked his small body to the floor. Why are you crying, you worthless trash? Hisashi snapped. The child cried louder and ran down the hallway. Inko stopped Hisashi from running after him. That brat doesn't deserve my last name. Hisashi snapped. Hisashi was a pro-hero. He had raised his son to believe he would grow into a strong hero like his daddy, no matter what quirk he got. It destroyed Hisashi to think his son couldn't follow in his footsteps. It destroyed his pride. After he had boasted about what a great hero his son was going to be to his colleagues, only to find out he was quirkless. Quirkless was a word that society branded worthless, and it was pitiful for the pro-hero to have such a worthless son. Hisashi needed his son to be perfect. He homeschooled the child, but not at the same level as other kids. He worked his son all day with little to no breaks, only allowing him to get a few hours of sleep. Whether it was academic or physical, he had to perfect it all. If he spoke without asking, he would be beaten. If he made a mistake, he would be beaten. If Hisashi was in a bad mood, he would be beaten. His cold attitude made Inko miserable. She just wanted a normal family, but the quirkless child had ruined it. When he was only 7, he was doing academic work that a university student would struggle with. He had trained his mind to work identically in order to avoid beatings. Since personality forms during childhood and is shaped through interactions with others and the order of the world, Izuku became very quiet and closed off. He was showing early signs of schizoid personality disorder, a personality disorder where a person avoids interactions with others and social activities. He completely stopped talking, unless ordered to speak. He hid his footprints and any sounds he could make to avoid annoying his father, though there was a point where the child broke. Despite his fear of the pain, he felt so unmotivated. The work seemed tedious, so instead he taught himself how to hack so he could read about what was happening in the hero world. It brought him excitement, but his father caught him and ended up burning him from his anger. The child stopped feeling pain. He felt very monotonous. He refused to do anything but hack into different sites and gather information. Hey! Oh, sorry. You don't have to talk about it if you're not comfortable, Aizawa mentioned. Izuku was about to reply, but his whole body froze. Aizawa stopped walking and glanced at him. What's wrong? Aizawa asked before gasping. He got in a fighting stance and looked around. He could sense someone dangerous. A villain leaped out of an alley towards the teen. He wrapped an arm around the kid and held a knife to his throat. His quirk had paralyzed the teen. Give me your money and phones, or he will get hurt. The villain snapped. Aizawa erased the villain's quirk and got his capture gear ready. As soon as Izuku felt he could move again, he instinctively grabbed the villain's arm and flipped him onto the ground. He reached for his zip ties, but of course there were none. Let me go. The villain growled as he tried to swing the knife at the teen. Izuku sighed and quickly knocked the villain out. He jumped up onto his feet and continued walking. Aizawa stared at the teen with wide eyes. Did you do a hero course or practice something? Aizawa asked as he followed after Izuku. I did piano and violin, the teen mumbled. That's not what I mean. You can't knock someone out without practice, Aizawa mentioned. Is that right? Izuku looked up at the cloudy sky. It looked like it would rain soon. Aizawa sighed. It wasn't long before they reached UA. Aizawa let them into the school, then walked towards the infirmary. Will she even be here so early? Izuku asked. Sometimes she is. If not, we will just have to wait. Aizawa answered. All right, he mumbled. When they opened the door to the infirmary, no one was there. Aizawa picked the teen up and sat him on the bed. I can walk, Izuku mentioned. But you're so small, we can't have you breaking again. Where will I get decent coffee? Aizawa pouted. The teen kicked him in the shin. The hero growled. I'm actually nearly 5 feet 2 inches. I'm just a late bloomer. Izuku mentioned. I dunno, kid. You're 17 and still a midget. Aizawa looked around the room. I bet you 10 Macarons I'll grow at least 2 more feet. Izuku confidentially gambled. Aizawa looked towards the teen and smirked. All right. Recovery Girl walked into the room and looked at the 2 boys. Look at me, having visitors so early in the day. She sat her bag down, then jumped onto her chair. Oh, good morning. This is Izuku. He makes good coffee that I can't live without. Can you please fix his broken arm? Aizawa pleaded. All righty. She grabbed the teen's arm and gave it a big kiss. The swelling immediately calmed down. She pressed down close to where the break was. Any pain here? She asked. Izuku shook his head. She pressed closer to the break. He shook his head. She pressed where it was broken, but he shook his head again. That's strange. Normally you'd feel at least a little pain. She rolled her chair over to a cupboard. Izuku stretched his arm out and made a fist. He was surprised at how much easier it was to move now. He was used to moving with broken bones, so it hadn't really bothered him. But it felt nice when it was healed. Recovery Girl wrapped his arm up and gave him a lollipop. Aizawa handed Recovery Girl the box of macarons. He made these this morning. His boss said you can have them. Aizawa offered. Recovery Girl opened the box and gasped. My favorite. Izuku jumped off the bed, which seemed to startle the 2 heroes. You should rest a little. My quirk drains your energy, she mentioned. Izuku tilted his head to the side. I'm fine. He signed. He said he's fine. Aizawa translated with a sigh. Why are you sighing? I thought you wanted coffee. Izuku teased. Ah, you're right. Aizawa cheered. Recovery Girl grabbed Izuku's shirt and glared at Aizawa. Doctor's orders, she commanded. Aizawa pouted and picked Izuku back up, then placed him down on the bed. Izuku glared at the hero. You can lay down, she mentioned before opening up her laptop. Izuku looked towards Aizawa. I've got work. You just broke your arm. Give yourself a break, kid. Aizawa signed back. I dislike staying in unfamiliar places. Izuku mentioned. This is the top hero school in Japan, the safest place to be. Aizawa reassured the teen. Izuku stared at the hero for a while, then reluctantly laid down on the bed. Are you going to stay? If you want me to, I'll stay as long as I can. Aizawa smiled. Izuku relaxed a little more, but he didn't let his guard down. Aizawa sat in a chair by the bed. then tapped on the teen's shoulder. Are you interested in this school? Aizawa asked. No. I already know lots about it. Izuku signed. Then what do you want to talk about? Aizawa asked. I don't know. Izuku mumbled. Recovery Girl looked towards the teen. She seemed surprised that he talked. He flinched and looked towards her. Aizawa tapped on the bed. It's all right. Aizawa mumbled. The teen glanced at the hero and sighed. Okay. They spent the early hours of the morning in the infirmary, until Recovery Girl finally let them go. They walked through the long UA hallways quietly. Aizawa glanced at the teen. He wondered how he could make his footsteps so quiet. He swung his fist towards the teen, but he dodged it quickly and got in a fighting stance. His eyes were wide as if he were completely on guard. I wondered how your steps were so quiet. Where did you learn such impressive skills? Aizawa asked. It's just my reflexes. Izuku mumbled. Reflexes. Aizawa threw a quick punch towards the teen, but he blocked it, then grabbed the hero's arm and flipped him onto the floor. It's a dangerous world. I think it's essential to know basic self-defense. Izuku let go of the hero. The hero threw his capture gear towards the boy, but he caught it in his hands and tied the two ends together. You see, not many pros can even catch my gear. Aizawa mentioned. Does it matter? I'm just a barista. Izuku threw the capture gear back towards the hero. Do you want your coffee or not? Aizawa watched as the teen walked out of the building. He followed close behind after deciding not to pester him anymore. The walk to the coffee shop was quiet. There was still barely anyone on the streets. The sun had only just come out, but the clouds blocked most of the light. When the coffee store was in sight, Izuku ran to the door and opened it. There were a few customers sitting down, reading or quietly chatting. Most of them looked towards Izuku and smiled. Morning, Aizu. One of them greeted. I heard Nanami broke your arm this morning. Are you okay? Another asked. Good morning. I'm fine now. Izuku quietly greeted. Aizawa walked up behind him and looked towards his usual spot. It was still free, so he went and sat down. Izuku walked up to the coffee machine and began grinding beans happily. The smell calmed him down, as well as the customers who relaxed into their seats. His hands worked quickly to prepare Aizawa's coffee. He took it up to the tired-looking hero and sat it down with a macaron. Thanks, kid. Aizawa smiled as he sniffed the bitter aroma of the coffee. Izuku bowed slightly before walking up to the other customers and asking if they had ordered drinks. After collecting their orders, he quickly got back to work. Nanami walked out of the kitchen and gasped when she saw him. Take the day off, she ordered. Izuku looked towards her and shook his head. You suck at making coffee. Your business will suffer if I'm not here. I'm not that bad. She pouted. Izuku took a coffee to one of the customers and smiled at them. He completely ignored Nanami while he made more coffees. She looked defeated and left him to work. Come back here, a villain demanded as he chased after the Vigilante. The Vigilante scaled a building quickly and ran across the top. He had lost the villain. He let out a hefty sigh and slumped down by the rails. It had been a long night. He had been investigating a specific company lately, one involved in human trafficking. He had discovered homeless people, specifically children, were abducted and taken into custody. Majority were forced into sex exploitation, but some were sent to villain organization if they had manifested powerful quirks. Izuku had gone to a villain organization that made large transactions with the company to scope it out. The inside had no cameras for him to hack, but he managed to find the exact location of their base. Long story short, he broke into their base and designed a floor plan on his tablet while he snuck around. He found a young boy in a room with a locked door. The boy seemed terrified. He was covered in bruises and scars. His eyes were covered by a blindfold, and his hands were tied up tightly behind his back. He knew the boy wasn't there by will. Izuku comforted him until he wasn't so scared, then took him away from the room. But, on his way out of the base, one of the members spotted him. So he ran. He had lost the villain when he got to the top of the building. The young boy was hidden under Izuku's cloak. You can come out now, Izuku quietly mentioned. The young boy pushed the cloak aside and glanced up at the Vigilante. He still seemed frightened. Are you going to hurt me? The young boy asked. No, I'll help you. Izuku smiled behind his mask. The small boy smiled a little, as if he had gained a little bit of hope. Izuku asked the child a few questions about the villain organization and company that sold him off to them. He recorded all the answers on his tablet, then stood up. He picked the child up and walked towards the edge of the building. He jumped off the building and ran through the dark streets. He eventually made it to the police station, where he snuck to Detective Tsukochi's desk. The detective gazed up at the vigilante and smiled. "It's been a while, Diamond," the detective smiled. Izuku smiled at the name. It was nice and simple. He was known as the Diamond Vigilante, mainly because he used playing cards as a weapon and had a diamond drawn on his face. Tsukochi looked towards the young child Izuku was holding with a quizzical expression. Izuku put the child down, then pulled out his tablet. He got up a Word document, then sat it in front of the detective. The detective scrolled through it quickly, then looked back towards the young child. "Then, shall we put him in the foster care system?" the detective asked. Izuku nodded and took the tablet back. He threw a USB onto the desk and put his tablet away. "I'll leave the rest to the police and heroes. The job is too big and dangerous for me." Izuku signed. "Really? Then why did you decide to save that child instead of leaving it to us like you left the rest of the abductions to us?" the detective asked. "Because this child's quirk can destroy the city, and the villain organization he was at planned to use it very soon. It's all in the document. I trust you'll put that child under the care of talented heroes, or the villains will find him." Izuku explained. "How do you know what his quirk is? Is it perhaps your quirk that tells you?" the detective inquired. "That is irrelevant." Izuku froze and spun around quickly. The windows to the police station all shattered. "Right, who's the one that took our belongings?" a villain hissed. There was a group of around 20 villains, standing in a cluster in front of the broken window. Izuku already knew all their quirks, so he was prepared to fight. Some police gathered with their guns pointing towards the villains. The villain's leader clicked his tongue. The air slowly filled with a purple mist that spilled from the leader's hand. All the villains pulled masks over their respiratory tracts. Izuku pulled out his throwing cards and quickly threw them through the air. They sliced through all the villains' masks. Some of the policemen began to pass out, but the villains did too. Izuku jumped out the window and ran quickly behind the leader. He was about to hit him over the head, but the villain spun around and grabbed his arm. He threw the vigilante into the ground. "I'm not like those weak villains you fought," the villain growled. Izuku flipped himself onto his feet, but he quickly sensed danger behind himself. One of the villains that hadn't passed out grabbed Izuku's shoulder, making the teen freeze. His body wouldn't move when he wanted it to. He was paralyzed. The leader kicked the teen in the stomach, sending him flying across the ground. Izuku glanced towards the villain that hadn't passed out, noticing he had a new mask on. He cursed at himself for not noticing a spare mask in each of the villain's pockets. The ones that managed to put their extra masks on before passing out began attacking the police that was still conscious, but there was one villain that seemed like the leader's sidekick. The sidekick had a strength-amplifying quirk. He made his way towards the teen and picked him up, then threw him into the building. Izuku thought about how the villains had found the child so quickly. He estimated they would at least need to wait for the child to get put into the foster system. Did they perhaps have a tracker on him? Probably. The teen wanted so desperately to be in control of his body again. He wasn't cautious enough around the villain with the paralysis quirk. He was snapped out of his thoughts when his rib cracked. "Stop zoning out, little boy." The sidekick chuckled. The sidekick played baseball with a metal pipe as a bat, and the vigilante as the ball. Izuku was sent flying across the road. His frail body skidded across the concrete, ripping his clothes and bruising his body. Eventually, he felt the other villain's paralysis quirk wear off. He quickly threw cards to rip through the villain's new masks, and before they could put on new ones, they passed out. The teen jumped up to face off with the leader. Though, sudden gush of pain jolted through his body. His stomach ached, his arms lost tension, and his legs began to weaken. His tongue was soaked with a metallic taste of blood. The leader ran towards the teen, holding a knife in front of him. Izuku's body didn't move. No matter how much he begged his legs to work, they wouldn't. Perhaps it was because the villain reminded him so much of his father, or because everything felt broken. The knife pierced into the teen's shoulder, but not even the slightest whimper left the teen's mouth. He somehow seemed infuriated by the villain. Bruised and winded, with a leg in agony, he grabbed the leader and flipped him to the ground before he even noticed that he had moved. His head was pounding. He swung his foot towards the leader's face. A loud crack sound flew through the air. The villain was knocked out and bleeding into the ground. Izuku ripped the knife out of his shoulder and threw it onto the ground while he limped back towards the police and detective. Tsukochi had passed out while protecting the child, who had also passed out. But it wasn't long before they all began to wake up. Izuku patched up any injuries the police had before the paramedics could arrive, while helping them handcuff all the villains. Some heroes had come to the scene to help out, one of them being Aizawa. Aizawa was the first to notice how injured the Vigilante seemed, so he confronted him. "Oi, Vigilante," Aizawa muttered. The teen looked quickly towards the hero. He wondered what Aizawa might want, since all the heroes were told to leave the Vigilante alone, not to capture him for the night. "You should get your wounds treated," the hero mentioned. The teen wondered how he had noticed he was injured. He thought he was hiding it well. Fine," the Vigilante signed. The hero wrapped the teen up in his capture gear and dragged him towards a couch. "Don't argue," Aizawa hissed. He sat the Vigilante down and demanded he didn't move while he grabbed a first aid kit. Izuku wanted to leave, but he realized how much pain he was in. The hero walked back to the teen and opened the first aid box. "Where does it hurt?" Aizawa asked. "I'm fine." Izuku signed once again. The hero glared at him and shook his head. "Let me help, idiot. You won't survive in this world if you don't accept help." Aizawa growled. "Then I'll do it myself," he argued. "Shut up." The hero noticed a wet patch on the Vigilante's black shirt. He carefully lifted up the teen's shirt and froze. There was a large graze across an old burn scar. He seemed less concerned by the vital fluid and more concerned by the massive scar that covered his stomach. The teen seemed nauseated by the sight of the wound. It reminded him of the time his scar was fresh. The hero carefully patched up the wound and glanced up at the teen. "How did you get such a big scar?" he asked cautiously. "Does it matter?" The teen signed with shaky hands. "That depends on how you got it, I suppose." The hero stood up. "Where else are you injured?" "The rest are just bruises." "Go help someone else," the Vigilante signed. The hero clicked his tongue and walked off to help the others. The teen took his mask off and spat out some fluids. Part of his lip was bleeding, but that didn't bother him as much as the pain in his stomach and shoulder. He put his mask away, not really caring if people saw his face. His hood hid his hair, and the purple contacts kept his real eyes hidden. He walked down the hallway in the police station and went to the bathroom. He washed the stains off his face and looked at himself in the mirror. He couldn't even recognize his beaten reflection. He painted his signature line and diamond on his face, then took his hood off. His green curls fell into his face, covering some of the scratches the villains had given him. His soft hair somehow made him seem innocent, no different to the other kids his age. He took a strange comb out of his coat and brushed it through his hair. The comb covered his hair with a purple coat of color. He smiled at his pitiful reflection. The comb was something he had created, using chemicals, but it only worked once. He had been saving it for a moment like this, a moment where he knew he had failed to protect himself from harm. He just didn't think it would be so soon. Vital fluid spilled from his mouth as he clutched desperately at his stomach. His injuries were too severe to treat at home. He needed professional help. He took out his tablet and opened up messages. "Nan Amy, I won't make it to work for a few days. I have caught a cold." He snapped the tablet in half and threw it on the floor. The Vigilante limped out of the bathroom and made his way down the hallway. Somehow it seemed much longer than before. He held a hand on the wall so he wouldn't fall over. He put his other hand over his mouth as he gauged. He threw up and bile up into his hand. It oozed through the gaps between his fingers and spilled to the ground. A policeman noticed him and rushed over. "Are you okay, kid?" The policeman placed a gentle hand on the teen's shoulder, but quickly took it away when stained it red. "I need help over here," the policeman yelled. Aizawa, along with a few other police, ran down the hallway. Izuku weakly looked towards the hero. "I can't pass out. I can't pass out. I won't pass out." Aizawa picked the teen up and ran down the hallway. There were already paramedics treating the wounds of whoever was injured, but as soon as they saw Izuku, they rushed him to the ambulance. Aizawa insisted that he got to sit in the back. As soon as Izuku got to hospital, he was taken to an emergency room. The doctors had to cut his coat and shirt off to get to his wounds. As much as he struggled to keep his eyes open, it was no use. He was concussed, and eventually he passed out. "You're not my son. You're useless." Hisashi snapped as he hit the child over the head. The small greenette didn't make a sound. He just accepted the beating. His father continued to kick his frail body until he had nearly passed out. The boy glanced at his computer. Codes were running across the screen. They looked exciting to the child. He wanted to alter them, replicate them, make them better. Indestructible. You should be obedient. Why are you wasting your time with this nonsense? His father snapped. Smoke was oozing from his clenched teeth. He looked towards his father with a blank expression. "Because I want to." The child sat up and smiled a twisted smile. The hero glared at his son. He was infuriated. "How dare you?" He snapped. Fire poured from his mouth, burning the child's clothes away. It was hot. So very hot. It stung. It burned. It burns. It burns. It burns. The teen screamed as he sat himself up quickly in the hospital bed. He was hyperventilating, desperate to inflate his lungs with air. He felt like he was suffocating in smoke. His whole body ached. He cried. He felt like he was on fire. Machines were beeping around him. The noise scared him. He saw someone rush towards him and try talking to him, but he couldn't hear them. He could barely see them. His contacts had gone foggy. Another person rushed towards him. He felt a sharp pain in his arm. He let out a scream. But the pain he felt began to disappear. The burning sensation faded away. But he felt so hot. He blinked a few times until his contacts were cleared. Then he assessed his surroundings. He was in a hospital bed, in a small room. The door had a lock on it, and the only window in the room overlooked a courtyard. Aizawa was standing by his bed, asking him if he was okay, while a nurse was adjusting what seemed to be in four. He looked towards the nurse, who was looking at the machines carefully. She recorded data onto a clipboard, then left the room. "Oi, Diamond," Aizawa called. The teen looked towards the hero quickly as he uncomfortably shifted away from the hero. "Are you okay? Did you have a nightmare or something?" Aizawa asked. The teen tightly gripped onto his old burn scar. He looked down, noticing he was basically covered in bandages. He looked at his arm, where failure had been carved into his arm. Of course, it was the one part that hadn't been covered by a bandage, just his luck. "You've been out for a few hours. A doctor with a healing quirk managed to fix your broken bones, but left the grazes and stitched wounds to heal on their own," Aizawa explained. "All right," the teen mumbled. "So you can talk." The hero smiled. "Well, you heard me when I woke myself up. I used sign language to hide my voice. No point now," he quietly explained. His voice sounded hoarse, not like his usual calming tone. He was glad. It meant Aizawa wouldn't realize who he really was. "Yeah, I can guess why you hid your voice." Aizawa smirked. The teen looked towards the hero, his head slanted to the side with a confused expression. "Because you're a minor, aren't you?" Aizawa sat down in a chair. The teen smiled. "What makes you think that?" "Well, now that I can see your face and hear your voice, it kind of gives it away." He glanced at the scar on the Vigilante's arm. The teen pushed the blanket off himself and jumped off the bed. He still had his pants and shoes on. "Oi, get back in bed. You're injured," the hero ordered. Izuku ripped the 4 out of his arm and took the pulse oximeter off his finger. The hero threw his capture gear towards the Vigilante, but it was dodged. The teen shattered the window with his elbow and jumped out, not caring how high he was. The hero threw his capture gear out the window and bound the Vigilante. "Do you want to die?" the hero yelled. The teen hissed at the pressure the gear put on his wounds. The hero pulled the teen back through the window and released him. "We are only 4 floors up." He held pressure onto the wound in his stomach. "So? You'll break a leg." The hero snapped. "No, I won't." Izuku carefully stood up. He quickly held his hand over his mouth as if he were about to vomit. The hero looked alarmed. "What's wrong? Get into bed." The teen grabbed the hero's arm and flipped him onto the ground, then used the capture gear to tie his arms together. "You're too gullible. You shouldn't have let me go when you pulled me back in." He snickered as he stood up and climbed onto the windowsill. "See you next time, hero." "Oi, don't be a brat." Aizawa snapped. Izuku jumped out the window and landed safely on the ground. He ran through the courtyard until he made it to the hospital's exit. Luckily, city hospitals were surrounded by large skyscrapers. He scaled the buildings to get a good view of where he was. He knew the ins and outs of the city, so he knew exactly where he was. He ran across the rooftops quietly. He didn't like being out in broad daylight, and he was sure a child covered in bandages and blood with a hospital wristband on would be considered suspicious. After a few minutes of running, he made it to his apartment and slid through the window. He took his contacts out and picked up a strange-looking hairbrush. When he combed it through his hair, the purple color began to fade away. He burned the hospital band and all the bandages the hospital had put on him. He was paranoid that they had put a tracking device on him somewhere. He carefully assessed his shoes, but they were the same as always. His socks hadn't been tampered with, but he burnt the remaining clothes he was wearing. He had a few copies of his Vigilante costume, so he wasn't bothered by losing one. After he showered, he got into some comfy clothes and sat down in his desk. It was already 4 p.m., meaning the cafe was closed for the day. He picked up his phone and gasped at the number of notifications. Nanami had sent him an ungodly amount of texts. He scrolled through all the messages. "Nanami, I won't make it to work for a few days. I have caught a cold." "Oh no. Are you alive? Hello? Hello? Do you need a doctor? Do you need to go to hospital?" Izuku. / Are you sleeping? I'll let you sleep. Ooh. Everyone is sad that you can't make them coffee. Shota hasn't shown up today. Do you think he is busy with work? Are you alive? Are you still sleeping? Should I bring medicine? I'm coming after work. Ooh. Izuku. I am finishing accounting. I'll bring you food. What food do you want? Do you have a fever? Izuku, have you died? I'm on my way to your apartment. I'll be there soon. Let me in when I knock. The teen quickly looked at the time she sent the message. She sent it 5 minutes ago. He had never had someone come over. He looked around his apartment. He quickly put away all his paperwork related to his vigilante jobs, then rushed around hiding any trace of his secret life. There wasn't much to really hide. His apartment was generally pretty clean and normal looking. He realized he didn't at all have a cold and cursed at himself. The doorbell to his small apartment rang. He flinched. Despite his worries, he opened the door. Nanami was standing in front of it, holding a bag. "Izuku, did you get my messages? Are you alive?" She screamed as she rushed into the apartment. He closed the door behind her and nodded. "Get in bed, you silly little thing. You look pale." She rushed around his small apartment, opening up the windows and blinds. "You need natural light and clean air," she explained as she followed him to his bedroom. She pushed him into bed and tucked him in, then opened the windows in his room. She sat a Tupperware container on his lap that had warm okayu in it. "Eat that. I'm going to disinfect your apartment." She pulled a disinfectant spray out of a bag and ran out of his bedroom. He smiled at her kindness and ate the okayu without any complaints. Nanami cleaned his whole apartment, then brought him a cup of green tea and some paracetamol. Turns out he had a slight fever, but not because he was sick, because he lost so much vital fluid a few hours ago. Since Nanami had cared for the teen when he was slightly unwell from his fight, he felt well enough to go to work the next morning. Even though Nanami told him to take the day off, he insisted that he was better. He opened the cafe that morning because Nanami overslept and called him. Though there weren't any customers, so he cooked some food in the back. Aizawa came in earlier than normal that morning. Izuku walked up to his table with a notepad to record his order. "The usual?" Izuku asked. "Yeah, thanks." Aizawa smiled. "I made some sweets this morning. You can have a free sample if you'd like." The teen wrote down the hero's order on the notepad. "That sounds nice, thanks." The hero yawned. The teen smirked as he walked away. He knew the hero had been extra busy regarding his vigilante self. He hacked into the documents and reports that had been written about himself at the police station, which allowed him to make it extra hard for them to find information out about him. He had hacked into the cameras in the hospital and city that had been suspected to capture him, and inserted a virus in the footage that not only deleted any trace of him on camera, but also deleted all open documents on the computers that searched through the footage. The vigilante sat a cup of coffee in front of the hero along with a plate of small sweets. "You seem tired," the teen mentioned. "Yeah, I haven't slept in over 48 hours. Aizawa chuckled. "Are you busy with work?" He asked. "Yeah. That vigilante I told you about, he might be younger than you. Is definitely a minor. He was in hospital yesterday after a dangerous villain attack, but he escaped right in front of me," the hero sighed. "Really? He must be skilled." Izuku smirked. "He is. And we can never seem to gather information about him." Aizawa mumbled. "That must be hard." "Hopefully you catch him eventually," the teen said as he walked back behind the counter. The hero glanced up at the greenette, noticing the slight resemblance he had to the vigilante. "Do you have any young relatives?" Aizawa asked. The teen looked towards the hero and shook his head. "I have no family left. My mother died a few years ago, and my father killed himself." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." Aizawa sympathized. "Why do you ask?" Izuku questioned. "Well, the vigilante looks a little bit like you. He's short, he had some freckles, but his hair is not as curly as yours," the hero explained. "Hey, I'm not short. I grew a whole inch." Izuku pouted. "Since when?" "Birth." The hero teased. The barista glared at the hero. "I'm going to put poison in your coffee next time you come." "That's not very nice." The hero chuckled. The teen aggressively polished the mugs. It had been a month since the villain attack. Izuku had not gone out on any patrols. Instead, he wrote up documents involving different scandals that criminal organizations had been involved in. He had enough evidence on some cases that he had no need to personally go to the crime scene. Despite his treatment at hospital, the teen took some time to heal. He didn't care for running around in a state far from perfect. That would be immoral to his personal rules. He tried to steer clear of anything that could get his true personality found out. His working life and vigilante life were two separate worlds. If he knew how, he would completely get rid of Izuku Midoriya. Well, he had already gotten rid of Midoriya. He illegally changed his last name to rid himself of a burden, a family. He went by Izuku now. His new last name was irrelevant to him. But to him, it still wasn't enough. The only thing stopping him from faking Izuku's death was a need for money. The world revolves around money. Therefore he needed his job. But Diamond, his vigilante life, was the life he identified with. Unfortunately, you can't make money off illegal occupations. Of course, unless you take it from someone else. Izuku's vigilante life wasn't about the money. To him, it was a means of correction, or a way to fix the corrupt world. He preferred to remain anonymous, however, which is part of the reason he hides from the world. For the first time in a month, the teen got into his vigilante costume. He had designed a new comb over his month in solitude. It worked as many times as he wanted, and could be disabled with the other comb whenever he used it. He used the hair color altering comb, and left his small apartment. He snuck into the police station and went to Detective Tsukochi's desk. The detective looked up at the teen and smiled. "It's been a while," the detective commented. "It has indeed," the teen signed. "You have a lot of guts coming, eh? I'm sure you know there are many heroes on the lookout for you since we know you are minor now." The detective pressed a button under his desk, then rested his arms on the desk. "Yes, well, I've been busy." The teen threw a USB onto the desk and smirked. "That wasn't a very nice move. I'm sure you know I'm not stupid. I disabled that button you just clicked before I came." The detective looked a little surprised, then chuckled. "How silly of me. Regarding the child from the villain incident, is he doing well?" Izuku asked. "Yes. He is living with a hero that has a kind family," the detective explained. "Great. Well, that'll be all. Goodbye." The teen waved and snuck out of the office. He traveled back to his apartment and sat down at his desk. After erasing his tracks at his computer, he got ready for work. Aizawa was frustrated. He hadn't seen the vigilante in a month, and just received word that he appeared at the police station. He didn't just want to capture him because it was his job. He was worried about the boy. He seemed so distressed when he woke up in hospital. He screamed at Burns when he woke up. It suggested to the hero that he had perhaps been physically assaulted, which was also evident by the massive burn that covered his stomach. Then there was the scars on his arm that spelled out failure. He wondered if the vigilante was in an abusive household, or if he escaped from one. Though, the fighting experience he seemed to have couldn't have manifested overnight. Where could he have learned? The hero had searched through school for a student with purple hair and purple eyes, but he didn't find anyone who looked at all similar. No matter how hard he tried to capture the teen on cameras, the footage always seemed to disappear. There were no missing person reports that seemed related to the teen. Not even the principal of UA knew who he was. It was as if he didn't even exist, as if he appeared out of thin air. Or perhaps his existence was never recorded in the first place. He wasn't wearing a wig, and his hair didn't seem dyed. Aizawa had checked in hospital. It was so confusing. He didn't know enough about the vigilante to trap him. It was getting to the point where he was thinking of using extreme measures to capture him. The vigilante wasn't safe. Villains were after him. Criminals that he had exposed for wrongdoings were after him. In such a technologically advanced society, he was in a dangerous predicament. Aizawa had to get to him first, before it was too late. The vigilante was sitting on the edge of a skyscraper, watching a fight down below. He was rooting for the no one in particular. He was just excited to see the outcome. But he was on edge. He felt eyes on him. He continuously looked around, suspecting someone was watching him. Though, he had no idea where to look. Thankfully, the night was cold, and he was good at sensing body heat from others. He ran across the rooftops to avoid confronting whoever had been following him, but he could hear the footsteps following him. He smiled and stopped running. "Why don't you come out?" The teen muttered through his mask. He heard a tch, then watched a mysterious person walk towards him from the shadows. The teen didn't speak. He waited and waited until he had assessed his entire surroundings. There were a list of things he had now ruled out. The unknown person had two others accompanying them. The two others were hidden in different shadows. The two others were better fighters. He could tell because they kept their footsteps silent, unlike the one that had shown themselves. All had quirks. The two hidden individuals had either a personal body manipulation quirk, they could stretch their body however they please, and a metal manipulation quirk. The one that had shown themselves had a growth quirk. It allowed them to grow plants wherever they pleased. They were too reckless to be heroes, so they had to be villains. Of course, that wasn't all he had noticed, but I'll spare you the details. "If you come with me quietly, I'll spare your life," the villain hissed. "I'll say, you did well keeping up with me, but you're a little bit reckless," the teen chuckled. The villain held out his hand and watched as vines wrapped around the vigilante. He laughed manically as they tightened slowly around the teen. "I thought you were strong and talented, but you're nothing. How could our boss possibly be defeated by a shrimp like you?" The villain said beneath his laughter, though he seemed surprised to see the figure in the vines was one of his colleagues. The vigilante hit the villain in the back of the neck, knocking him out. "You move very slow. I had enough time to switch places with your buddy before either of you noticed." The vigilante glared into the darkness, where the last villain remained. "Would you like to come out too?" The villain ran out towards the teen, ready to attack, but immediately collapsed. A pool of vital fluid began to surround him. The teen chuckled as a playing card flew into his hand. "How slow," he mumbled to himself. He zip-tied all the villains together and sat them by the rails of the building. The teen dusted his hands on his pants and stretched. "I have to say, I almost didn't notice you." "Eraserhead," the teen quietly mumbled as he turned around. In the opposite corner of the building stood pro-hero, Eraserhead. He had a smirk wiped across his face. "You put on quite the show, problem child." The hero teased. "Problem child, HM." The teen sighed. "Look, Mr. Hero, it'd be easier for me if you treated me like an adult." "I'm afraid it doesn't work like that." The hero walked towards the vigilante. "Besides, if we were to treat you as an adult, we would go back to pressing criminal charges against you, instead of sorting out whatever restrictions your caretakers need to put on you. Well, the only things you could charge me for is trespassing and running from heroes and police. That is, of course, unless you have proof of other crimes." The teen smiled innocently. The hero threw his capture gear towards the vigilante, but the teen dodged it and quietly ran behind the hero. He grabbed the man's arm and flipped him onto the ground, quickly lodging his knee into his back so he couldn't get up. Though, he was confused. Why was the hero so slow? Normally, he would have reacted before the teen could even get close. He felt a pinch in his leg and quickly looked towards the course. The hero had lodged a needle into his thigh. It's unfortunate for me to tell you this, but I have a high tolerance for benzodiazepine, the teen mentioned. The hero chuckled devilishly. Luckily for me, it isn't at all related to sleeping. It's a hallucinogen. The teen tilted his head to the side. Not sure how that could help you. Aizu, a husky voice called from across the building. The teen flinched and looked up. His father was there, walking towards him. The teen's thoughts ran frantically around his head. His father couldn't be there. It was impossible. He was dead. The hero shook the vigilante onto the ground and stood up. The vigilante was too focused on the figure in front of him to care about the hero. He seemed vulnerable, frightened, almost like a scared cat that was too afraid to move. To the hero, the teen's eyes were screaming for help. He was trembling, struggling to keep his composure. "Come here, you worthless little twerp," his father demanded. The teen could never disobey his father. It was the same as asking to be hit. But the teen was too petrified to move. Smoke poured from his father's mouth. He seemed infuriated. "Are you disobeying me?" he snapped. The teen trembled. He told himself it wasn't real over and over and over again, but that didn't make it disappear. His breathing became faster as he began to panic. The hero took out his phone and made a quick call while he watched the teen in distress. He wondered what the teen could see and why it had him so scared. Fire formed a circle around the vigilante and his father. It felt so hot. The teen wondered how a hallucination could alter his senses so well. "You think this is all in your head, huh? This is real, you quirkless monster." The hallucination screamed. The vigilante reached for his cards, but he noticed his coat was gone. He was in a white shirt and white shorts, the clothing he was forced to wear his whole childhood. He felt a stinging pain in his arm and looked towards it. The scar that screamed the word failure had been reopened. Blood was gushing down his arm. The pain felt so real. The pain was real. He looked back towards his father before noticing a horrifying scene. His mother lay dead on the ground. She was lying in a pool of her own blood, but her dull eyes were fixated on the teen. "If only I never gave birth to a useless child," she whispered. Then her head was crushed by the foot of her own husband. Izuku glanced at his father. He was covered in blood that didn't belong to him. In his hand was a knife. "How dare you disobey me?" he yelled as he ran towards the teen. Izuku tried to run, but he fell to the ground. Fire flew towards him as he let out screams of agony. He begged for it to stop. He didn't dare open his eyes. He didn't want to see the face that caused his pain. He begged and begged for it to stop, but nothing worked. He felt his pitiful consciousness slip away. So, this was the end of part 1 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.